Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Big Business Blueprint live interviews, where we speak with one business leader and understand their personal and startup growth playbook, fundraising lessons, products and services they offer, and how they think about their market expansion, customer acquisition, retention, attracting talent, and building a tight knit workforce, and so on. I'm Bhuva Shakti, based in New York, and the founder of WalletMax. We are a global community of startups, investors, executives focused on increasing sustainable funding access, especially in climate tech, fintech, deep tech, and AI sectors. If you are a fintech startup, don't miss out the fundraising event from WalletMax. We have startup pitch competitions and investor panel discussions. It's on April 20th as we kick off the New York FinTech Week. The tickets are now live. You can see the Luma registration link scrolling below in this screen. Now, in my startup growth playbook interviews, the one we are in today, I typically invite a startup founder or co founder and interview them about their growth lessons. But more importantly, what differentiates them from the crowd? How do they prioritize impact along with profits and planet? We deep dive into their personal, professional, and startup journeys and their mission to uplift. Today, we are speaking with Francois Servranckx, founder and CEO of Green Gooding. Francois is a former humanitarian aid worker with over 15 years of experience in corporate impact, sustainability, and strategic partnerships, working with global organizations like Doctors Without Borders, UNICEF, HP, Lego, and others. Francois' startup, Green Gooding, is an on demand rental platform that makes accessing small appliances and event equipment easy, affordable, and sustainable. With 900 plus rentals and 650 customers and recognition as a New York City circularity champion, Green Gooding is proving that smarter consumption can deliver both impact and growth. Let me now hand over to Francois and invite him to say a few words about his background and career path. Over to you, Francois.
Hi everyone, hi Bhuva, and thanks so much for welcoming me today to the show. It's a pleasure to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the CEO of Green Gooding, which is an on-demand rental platform for small equipment and appliances. We've been running for about 3 years, and I'll share more details as we get more into the conversation. And I think today the idea for me is to share my story, but also, as a founder, to talk to other founders about what I've, succeeded at, what has been a bit more challenging, and share some of the tips basically. So very happy to be part of the conversation today.
Thanks so much, Francois, for taking time to join us today. Tell us a little bit about what your professional background is and career path is. It's a little bit non-linear getting into entrepreneurship. What's your unique secret sauce?
Yeah, for sure. As I think as many founders would relate today, I think often entrepreneurship is not necessarily a straight line, and that's certainly the case for me. I've done many things before launching my company a few years ago. But what I was always there is envy the idea of making an impact, making a difference. And that's kind of why from a very young age, I looked into what would be potential like career path to do that, just that essentially. And that led me to study humanitarian affairs. So basically the laws and regulation regulating humanitarian aid when you deploy operation in other countries in particular, and to become a volunteer for smaller organization in Africa and then bigger organization, including Doctors Without Borders. I spent about 6 years plus, I think, in Africa, in Senegal, in Kenya, in Nigeria, working for a variety of organizations. And then I moved to New York with Doctors Without Borders to still handle communication for emergency situations. So I was based in New York, but more often away, to be honest, traveling to places where people are often facing difficult situations like Haiti, South Sudan, Ethiopia, and other places. So this was really like a big moment in my life, I think, because I was lucky and fortunate to be able to be part of a team that were making a difference, a concrete difference for people's lives, basically. and that definitely stayed with me. And that kind of like drove me to continue in that space, if you want. So then I moved to like corporate sustainability in the private sector in the US. But I always had in mind, like many founders, when you have an idea, to keep digging, to keep going further. And that's
Yeah.
why, while still having a job, working full time at an insurance company here in the US, I did study to start green gooding. And
Mm,
the main reason why I did it is basically because when I was abroad, especially in some places in Africa or in Haiti, you could see that there are so much waste.
mm,
I'm talking about literally concrete waste, garbage basically being exported to other countries basically and being put away, that people had to deal with. And when I arrived in New York City 18 years ago, I was stricken at first by how many things people get rid of in the street, on the sidewalks. When you walk most neighborhoods, you see a lot of things people don't need and don't get rid of. And that's especially true. I don't know if anyone has walked the street of New York City lately after the snowstorm, but it's right here in your face. You could see that we literally buy too many things, and we should definitely do things differently. And that's kind of what drove me to start Green Gooding.
yeah, I can totally relate with that. There is no concept of repair or reuse or see if something can be made to work again. It's just like, okay, let's replace it. And snow, definitely, I feel it. When it snows, it's all good. But after the snow, it's very messy. And with all the garbage and other things, it still gets really bad. So it's not a new concept that you have launched in green gooding, more like it has been your pathway and passion through your entire life. It's just a different form of giving back and working through sustainable means, especially being inclusive of all people everywhere, not just certain categories of people. So, what is the pivotal moment in your life that made you start green gooding while you're at Guardian Life and then transition into it full time? Why that moment specifically?
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. I think this is for me. It all started during the pandemic in some ways, right?
Mm,
I'd been working in non-profit sector. I was interested in knowing a bit more what the corporate world was doing to make the world a better place. So during the pandemic, I studied, sustainability and corporate impact online. But also had the opportunity to think about ways to get more into the reuse space you just mentioned. There are many. It can be very complex. There are a lot of things that happen in the circular economy. Some people talk about the 3 R's, the 2 R's, the 5 R's. But anyway, it's like repairs, recycling, reuse. These are all of them basically. And initially, I really wanted to get into the repair space. So basically, to make sure that people could keep things running longer. We
mhm. Yeah.
if you put your TV on, if you listen to radio or anything, every day you're encouraged to buy something new. It's always get more all the time. And the truth is that the best thing you can please do for the environment is to keep things running longer.
Hmm.
The challenge for people who are familiar with that space is that it's often very hard to repair things for a variety of reasons. Maybe there's no spare parts that don't exist. It's actually not been designed to be fixed. There's no people who have the skills to fix things. So I talked to a lot of people. I went around and basically came up with like a list of like things I could not address myself. I was like, okay, this is not something I can do. It's too hard for me. Some people are better at this, and it's great. I'm happy to see this. And then, as often, and I know we're going to talk a bit more about networking later on. I talked to people around me, and a friend of a friend introduced me to someone who had started on-demand rental business in France. Our business was slightly different than Green Gunning. It's more like a B2B rental system for small offices, like law offices or doctors' offices. She rents fancy coffee machine, for example, and things like that. And she also works with like a center that helps people that maybe a different path in life, who are a bit out of the workforce, to get back into the workforce. So there's also like a social and training aspect to this. And when
Hmm.
she explained what she was doing, I was like, wow, I love this. This is so cool. I love to do this, but I don't know any of this basically right now. If I was to do this in the US, in New York, it's a lot of dots to connect. And like, I don't know to do this, but what I can at least try to do is to start a rental business for small appliances in my neighborhood. It's small,
Mm.
contained. I can go talk to maybe one or few businesses and see whether they would be interested. And that's kind of how it started. So based on conversation, based on time I had during the pandemic to study, to talk to people, and based on luck, I also got to talk to people in my neighborhood who are open to try it, basically.
That's really great, especially also like you mentioned. Even if you are ready to repair something, new technology, new things are constantly coming up every day. So obviously, people are wanting to get a new model or something like that. And also, more importantly, many times you don't get spare parts for an older model, even if it's only a couple of years old. It's very difficult to repair. So this is a great concept where they can always have the latest and greatest, but they don't have to invest, throw out, buy new, and go through the hassle of repairing and things of that sort. And a great idea where you started in your neighborhood. And I think that's why you call green gooding more a community powered and climate smart future. So, can you let us know a little bit more about what is meant by community powered and climate smart future?
Yeah, for sure. Before that, I just want to say, give like a kudos and shout out to two companies basically in the repair and resale space. I think I've talked to, I think I mentioned that it's hard to repair things, but there's one company called iFixit.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely encourage anyone to like go check it out. They not only they provide kits to repair things. So basically, you can go online and you can get basically kits to repair your smartphone, your computers, and many more things now. And with tutorials, it's super well done. But they also work on the legislative aspect, basically on the right to repair, bills are trying to pass in many states in the US. So that's one of them. And another one is called Back Market. It's a company that
Mm.
resell second-hand and used electronics. They've been very successful. I think they raised more than $300 million, I think, early last year. And it shows
Oh,
that
okay.
even the resale market is something that is becoming more and more of a thing. And we know this, there are many more platforms coming in that space. But now back to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, where it all started. Um, Basically, I think the reason why I say it's community focused is because in many ways it's also based on the sharing economy principle. The fact
Hmm.
that we don't need to own the same stuff multiple times.
Yeah.
It's really
And then
best.
you get a storage space to store the extra stuff.
Exactly. It's good for storage business, but it's not good for people's well. I would put it this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we, if you think about it, I think there are so many things we own in multiple, units across, in one apartment buildings, for example, or even just one neighborhood. And most of these things sit idle. I mean, there is a stat that says that if the average use of a drill, for example, is 12 minutes during its lifetime. Um, so you can see that, if you had a drill and it could be shared between people, obviously it would be better for, in terms of economics, it's less expensive for people, but it's also better for, the community and for the planet. So we knew from the get-go that green gooding, the community aspect was strong and very important in terms of sharing, basically. The other part also, I think, which is central to what we do, the business we've built, is that we work with local businesses. Essentially, the way we operate currently is that we partner with 7 small businesses in New York City, who essentially provide our rental equipment to their customers. And it's kind of I call it a win-win-win situation, where it's a win for the customers because you actually save money by renting something you only use once in a while, and also you don't need to store it. It's a win for the small shop because they have we share revenues with them. The percentage varies on the type
Mm.
of location and product, but essentially it's a revenue sharing agreement. And it's more traffic for these local businesses, which we know at the time of like harsh competition or very tough competition from the e-commerce is essential for them. I think many small businesses are trying to get more people to come back to purchase there. And if you think about it, when you rent something, you are going to go twice to that location. You're going
Yeah.
to go once to pick it up, right? To pick your equipment,
Mhm.
and another time to bring it back. And most likely, in one of these two times, if not the two times, you're gonna actually buy something there. And obviously, then it's a win for us and the community because I mean, it's revenues for us for green building, and it's less waste for the community. So
Yeah, I mean, it's really great.
thank you. And I think your second part of the question was about more like the smart cities aspect. I think
Yeah.
I think from this one it may be a bit harder for me to answer. I would say. I mean, it's more in line with like all the innovation, I guess, we see in cities. When essentially when there's such density of people, it's easier to try things and to see if they work or they don't work. They might not always work, but at least you can try it out. There's enough density of potential customers to try it out. And I think that's why we see for green gooding, but you could say the same thing for city bikes, for example. You've got city
Mm.
bikes in New York City because there's enough density of people who don't have enough space to store their bikes, but you can start like a sharing, business model essentially. So I think that falls into that kind of like situation where it's more like common public goods. If you want, in cities, it's a bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. Especially great business development and revenue generation strategy where it's a win-win-win, getting more foot traffic, but also building trust and transparency within the community where people are able to trust and get a product from someone they, visit a little bit more often than not. And they know something is wrong, they can always go back and ask for support. And I also know there are, and thanks for sharing those couple of examples. There are a couple of startups also that are looking to see how they can collect electronic waste. The same way you mentioned in a lot of parts of the world, a lot of waste from other parts of the world are being dumped. And collecting electronic waste is also a huge problem now. People always want to get the next best iPhone or Android or Samsung phone version. And then what happens to the old phone? There is no way to recycle that, right? So collecting electronic waste and recycling is also a part of the circular economy that you're talking about. It kind of works with the entire ecosystem. And I also know for city bike, more than storing space, people prefer it to the public transport or the traffic on the roads, right? So it's also going away with comfort and good for the wallet. So it's good for the planet, good for the wallet, getting better time and energy and efficiency in your pockets. You don't have to wait to recycle and wait to repair, right? So there's so many advantages beyond just talking about it as a climate benefit. It's climate plus so many other things. But when we talk about lot of profit and business development and the growing opportunity, when you add sustainability to it, these days there is not a lot of support. Where do you see opportunities and challenges specific to market expansion for your startup? So right now you're in certain places. How do you plan to expand? Do you see opportunities or challenges in the current geographic location or the sector?
Yeah, totally. No, I'm glad. I think, when I started green gooding, the whole point, and then we've talked quite a bit already about the circular economy and the environmental impact and how good it is for the community. But I think, at the end of the day, it has to be a business. It has to be a business
Yeah.
that makes money and that can scale fast, because it's good for a business, but it's also good for the impact you can have, the faster it can scale. So it's kind of why I think from the very beginning, I come from the non-profit sector. We talked a bit about this before. And I've seen so many times, great project being stopped because grants were stopped. And it's something we've actually certainly seen recently as well, I think in the US and other places. And I didn't want this to happen. I could have decided to go for more like a non-profit type of model. But I'd seen it before, and it's done great things. But I also wanted it to be sustainably in terms of finance, basically
Yeah.
profitable. So I knew that I had to prove a couple of things when I started. First, I needed to understand whether this was a thing or not. meaning it's fine to have a cool idea. We all have cool ideas, right? And it's like, okay, what about we do this? What about we, create a system where people could rent what they need when they need it? But the big question is like, would people would actually do this? Is it a thing?
Yeah.
And at the time, and it's a bit better now about talking about, when I really started the research was like 4 or 5 years ago. If you are trying to do research on like on-demand rental equipment, in market in the US, nothing would come up. This was not a thing. This is, it's a very like frontier kind of pioneer type of situation. So it doesn't mean there is no market. It means there's hardly any data available on this. And as you mentioned, it had been done before. It's not new, but it never grew big essentially. So I was back to the drawing board saying, okay, so there's no data. Obviously, before spending too much money or time on this, I need to know whether that is actually something. It's kind of why from the very beginning, my first goal was to see whether people would do it. Started very small scale, without any, with like just basically some few strings, a small, IKEA shelves with like second-hand equipment in someone's shops, basically, and try to see whether people would do it. The good news, although it took some time, and we'll talk about this a bit later, the good news is that, you know, after a couple of months, it started picking up basically. And while we had only one rental the first month, now we have more than one rental per day, and we've passed actually the 1,000 rentals, or almost at 1,100 right now. So this is definitely there is demand. The second thing I wanted to show and to at least understand is whether we'd be able to make a system that works, basically that people could understand. People will understand what is it, what do you do this, how can you book, pay, and get your equipment. Also, how will it work for the shops? What kind of system do you have to put in place in terms of logistics for them to be able to clean up, things between rentals so that the product is always clean and working, and that we would make enough money. So the good news here as well is that it worked. It was very clunky at first because, like any founders, that you're a bit scratchy at the beginning. So I
Yeah.
used a lot of like third-party type of apps and stuff just to make it work. There are tons of limitation with these services, but that really helped get off basically. And finally, the last question was, are we making money? Can we make money?
Yeah.
And I think like often when you do this, you have to move the pole a few times to see where the right place is for your margin, for the prices, and so on. And now I'm happy to report that as of 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we're finally breaking even.
Oh,
um,
great.
and we're fully bootstrapped. So it's a yes on the three points essentially.
Yeah, no, definitely. Not every founder needs to fundraise. Your business can generate your own revenue. And I totally agree with a lot of organic growth within your community. More word of mouth is much more powerful than any marketing that you can potentially do, right? So, because once it starts scaling, it's going to continue to scale. And I also know a couple of companies, I don't recall the name, but they do rent clothes, right? So you can rent clothes like how you're renting um, equipment. So that way, even they don't end up on a landfill, and you don't have to buy something and put it in your closet and it's there forever. Rather, you can also get the latest fashion. So I think you have broken into a new category where a lot of people are trying to break in also in different sectors like clothing, electronic equipment, and others. Past data doesn't exist, definitely is proof that there is a need, but no one really addressed it, right? So it's great that you have been able to break even and continue to grow with just bootstrapping. But while you're having so much success, have you faced challenges? Especially, are there any regulations in your business? Is there anything specific to US regulations that you have to comply with? Because you are renting out equipment that could potentially have some regulatory concepts.
Yeah, not totally. And thanks for bringing this up. Um, the good news is that on it, I think that applies to many marketplaces because that's also where we're going to. On I'll share a bit more about this in a bit. Um, the good news is that in terms of regulation, it's actually I mean, I would say there's obviously the, like liability. You know, you need to. There's a lot of legal aspect you need to look at. I think when
Oh,
you know, when you have someone renting equipment and using it, basically. So liability is one of them. Another one, it's not necessarily linked to regulation per se, but it's more linked to the customer's experience. You know, I think there's a big need for insurance. People want to know, you know, what
mm,
happens if the equipment is broken, who's paying for what, and these kind of things, basically. Um, but again, I think it's, you know, it really depends from one marketplace to the others. I think. So so far, I would say we don't suffer from too many or lack of regulations. I put it this way. I think it's not necessarily like one of the big challenge for us. You know, that might change in the future. We never know. But right now, it's not the case. On in fact, you mentioned maybe the company you are referring to is a Run the Runway. Um, so it's one of them, and you see many of these companies. You know, if you think about Turo for cars, if you think about Airbnb, obviously this is 10 years ago or more,
yeah,
but that's what they do. You
yeah,
know, they rent someone else's place, so it's a
uh-huh,
marketplace for apartments, and obviously the risk for an apartment is much higher than for a carpet
hmm
cleaner, right? So far we've been lucky, I would say, with regulations. It's not a main issue. I think the for us the main challenge is really to if you think about it, the competition is not necessarily people who like over renting option, right? The competition is very much more over buying option because what we're trying to shift essentially is a behavior from I need something, let me buy it, to
yeah.
I need something only once.
Just
Or
order it online, it comes to you in a day.
right, exactly. Or I only need this once for this specific occasion. I really don't need to buy. I can just maybe get it locally or from my neighbor, basically, and bring it back when I don't need it anymore. So it's kind of like more like the shift we need to do, and we have to do this without any marketing budget. Again, so still running a very lean business here. So this is why I think adoption can take some time. um, a big part of funnel for us right now in terms of customer acquisition is really people seeing it in one of our 7 partner stores location in New York City.
hmm
You go there, you see it, you're like, oh, this is cool. I mean, I often play spy, I guess, when I go to these shops and I hear people talking about it when they see it. The reaction is always positive. People love it. Like, oh, this is cool. They had this. This is, this is nice. And often it's not something you do on the spot. You think about it, and then maybe a few days, a few weeks later, you're like, hey, remember what we saw at that place? And then you do it. So we know
Yeah,
that adoption, takes a bit of time, and that you need to create multiple entry points basically for people to be exposed to it. But then once you've done it, I think you've built a base of loyal supporters, basically, because just to give you a sense, I think right now we've over 1,000 rentals, we've had 800 customers, and almost 22% of our customers come back. So we have a very high return rate for customers, and also very high satisfaction rate. We ran a survey, I think, back in November, and the satisfaction rate at the time was 4.7 out of 5. So we have
that's great.
very strong thing. I'm gonna quote someone. Sorry, I missed her name. Someone who attended an event recently, but she said, when you start a company, you need to build a product that people will love and will tell their friends about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really important, right? I don't know why people spend so much on marketing budget because it doesn't get you scalability or sustainability on the business for a longer term, right? If adoption is a little bit slow, but once they adopt, they're going to keep coming back, right? So that's the stickiness. So if you are able to generate revenue, break even without raising external funds while bootstrapped, because customer acquisition and retention is working like a good cycle with great customer satisfaction score. And that's a point many founders do not understand, because everyone wants to fundraise, but do you have to fundraise? After you fundraise, you have much more bigger challenges than fundraising itself, right? So if you can do a good job, keep the customers, get more customers by word of mouth, and increase stickiness, even though adoption is a little bit late. There's nothing like that. You don't have to fundraise at all. So I think that's a great concept.
Totally. I just had on the, and I'm sure Bhuva, it's the same one. I'm sure for many people listening to the show today, it's the same thing. I think the more you talk to people, the more you get different advices, basically, in
Mm.
terms of do you need to show traction or don't you need to show traction? At which stage do you fundraise or don't you need to fundraise? I mean, every case is different, everybody is different, everybody has a different network too, so if you can, and different means, I think, I was lucky enough to be able to not make too much money for a long time, and my wife was basically, paying the expenses here for a bit, and I'm very grateful that I got our support to do this, but it's not always possible for everyone. So every case is different, and when it comes to fundraising, for sure. But for me, I would say, I'm not like a purely AI product, and today we know that this is what is being mostly funded, not everything, but obviously a lot of like venture capital is going toward AI. So if you're not a AI purely product, you're gonna face some headwinds, put it this way. And the way to attract attention is gonna be, to me, I think, to show traction and to show that you're onto something that could become big. So the pressure is higher, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think you need to show more than maybe you used to in the past. But at the same time, I think it pushes you to do even better, to be even more careful, to be lean and to really think about how you spend every single dollar, essentially.
Yeah, traction is really important. In earlier days, you can still fundraise with customer traction, or if you're a B2B with clients who are in the business side of things. But today, you need a little bit more. You need all the cards lined up perfectly to fundraise from the right venture capital or angel investor. And then it takes a little bit longer in terms of diligence. So you need to be ready for that. And for you to take on that journey much more smoothly, it's better to have some traction. Even if you don't break even, it's good to have some traction while you can take the funds and scale it. But without traction, it's really becoming difficult to have the first conversation with investors these days.
Totally. I mean, you are the expert when it comes to fundraising. I can't speak too much on fundraising myself, just my own experience. But yes, I think for sure I could see I've joined different programs, and I'm happy to share a bit more about it after. But I think I think it does make a huge difference when you can go beyond the idea, when you can show that there's something concrete behind this. It might not, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But if you
Yeah.
can show that
And you
people
may
are really
pivot, who knows?
right, exactly, it's a never-ending thing. But if you can show that people are ready to pay for it and come back, clearly there's something. Then the next big question, obviously, is like, how big is that market? How fast can it grow, right? But I think the first step definitely is, to try to get customers, because frankly, it's the best validation you can get. It's like, once you start having people using your services, and if you can even talk to them. I got lucky. I got to talk to a few. I did a bit of a customer survey, and I tried to understand a bit better, some of the key essential facts in terms of how did they learn about us, what did they, what did they think about the service, and so on. What do they think is missing, and what should be the next steps? But this these were some of the best conversation I had, basically to orient to basically direct my business, sorry, in the right direction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. instead of building something and making the customer to try to like the product or solution or service, it's really essentially just talk to them, find out what's the pressing pain point or what's keeping them awake at night, and build something small, test it out, and then scale, right? So basically, build for what the customer needs, then you don't have to really struggle a lot to find the customer because the customer has told you already what they are willing to pay for. So thanks for sharing that, Francois. And we've spoken about a lot of successes and how we can do things better, how we have done things, how we can really scale in different directions and opportunities and challenges. I'm sure you might have made some mistakes along the way. So can you tell us about a mistake you made? How did you navigate? Do you have any valuable lessons for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about something that is a bit of a chicken and egg, I think, situation for many non-technical founder. I'm a non-technical founder. I didn't, I don't have a tech background. And obviously, Green Greening was, it started as like a kind of like community sharing kind of like idea, but really it's becoming like a tech platform. It is a tech platform if you want now, the way it operates, basically. So
Hmm.
at first, I think, not knowing anything really on tech, I tried to do some AI bootcamps and stuff like that, but I could not reach a point where I could really build my thing myself, basically. So at first, I subcontracted, basically externalized. I tried to work with consultants to build a platform,
Hmm.
and I would say I wasted. I mean, I learned things along the way, but I did waste quite a bit of money and time doing it because it's very hard to externalize some of the key function, key aspect of your business. Basically, you will soon create a dependency essentially on someone you need to constantly pay when you don't have money to pay them.
Yeah.
Um, so that was kind of like a big thing, and that led me to looking for a co-founder with a technical background, which on itself could we could spend a whole episode talking about ways to like find co-founders. But eventually, I found a co-founder, Julian, who is our founding CTO now, and that made like a huge difference, basically, because suddenly it was not just a vision and maybe a business idea that I knew kind of where to lead to. It became the ways to empower that vision through technology, especially at we know today with AI in particular, technology goes fast, so you don't want to be left behind. So I think that was the first thing, first mistake I guess I did. Another one, there's this whole question about being stubborn or not when you have an idea or long to again, you're going to have many different things and many different opinions on this, but one quote I like is there's no people who fail, there are people who quit too early. I don't know if you heard this one before. It's
Yes,
great on paper.
I've heard it.
I love it, I love it. But it raises so many more questions. It's like, but still, how can
Yeah.
how long are you going to last if you don't see any traction or if you don't have money? You can't. How long will it take for you to say that maybe it's time to pivot and to do something else? Again, it's different from case to case, on a case by case basis. But for me, that kind of like stubbornness was about launching a marketplace. So currently, Green Greening is not a marketplace. It's a business where basically we provide a space for rental businesses to list their products. And if you want, I'm the one subsidizing the supply side by providing equipment, setting up a system, and everything with that. It requires to find new retail partners in a city, which in itself is a full-time job to go talk to many business owners and so on. So for a long time, this is what I want to do because I can control everything from A to Z. And I can make sure that the service is perfect, that people are going to be happy and come back. The problem with it is that it's going to take forever to expand. Unless
Yeah.
you have some funding and you can recruit a team of like people who can go talk to other businesses, which is not my case. It's going to take time. And the other problem with this on top of that is that it limits many things. It limits geographical expansion because you only have these 7 locations. And it also limits inventory because it's only what is available on the platform is only what is available in those shops, basically.
Yeah.
And when I talk to customers, for example, and I ask them, what else do you want to see on the platform that is not there? People were mentioning, oh, we'd love to see tools there. We'd love to see DIY equipment there. I would love to see sport or camping gear. This is all great, but I don't have any of this. And I don't have the capital to buy all of this, basically. And it's, it's not only buying it, it's maintaining it, it's storing it, it's a lot, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I was like, you know what? You have to reconsider the marketplace idea here. You have to think about it. You have to bring it back. And that's kind of like this shift happened 6 months ago, I think. And I was like, okay, fine, we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna do it right. And that's kind of why we are actually building a marketplace platform now, where soon people will be able to list their own equipment for rent, in addition to existing shops. So I don't know if I want to call it a mistake per se. It's more maybe I needed time to figure this out or to convince myself that this was the right thing to do. But part of me thinks that I should have done this earlier.
Yeah, I mean, every founder has that, and especially you found out different ways where it might not work or it might work, but it might not scale for the long term. Finally, you've landed on an idea that is an extension of your original idea, but it could be sustainable in the long term. And it's a great benefit for people also, right? So they can rent their equipment and make some money from there as well. Basically, right now, how you can generate solar power in your house. You have excess, you can give it to your neighbor and still make money. So you're being sustainably conscious, but also financially generating profit. So similar way, I also do not consider it a failure because what happens is when founders make a couple of mistakes, they try to withdraw and probably try to rethink the whole idea. Maybe you're getting to a better place with the current idea, or maybe sometimes there are scenarios where people really have to pivot, that this idea is not going to work any longer, and people sometimes take little longer to make the decision to pivot. And what do you think about pivoting? Because is it good thing, bad thing? How soon you can pivot? You mentioned that you could have thought about this marketplace a little bit sooner. Is this a difficult thing to pivot so early on, or it needs to take its time to think about the strategy to pivot?
That's a good question. Thanks for asking. I think there are two types of pivot. I'll put it this way. The first one is more about the overall vision, right? And I think this is maybe the one that should not pivot too much. I think because you start with a vision, you know what you want to do. You might not know how this is going to be, but I think to try to dig deeper into this vision and to like make it more precise is key, and it's going to take time. I think maybe for some people it's going to be straightforward, but for other people it might not be. This said, I think it's very important to stay true to your vision, true to your values as well. I think is another
Hmm.
important element here. And then there are more, I don't know if I want to call them, functionalities or features basically, but there are things basically that you need to change fast basically to see how that works. If something doesn't work, there's no need to wait for too long to change it. Essentially, it's what I'm trying to say. One good example for us was the rental duration.
Mm.
When I launched Green Greening, I was obsessed and convinced. I mean, I was convinced and obsessed with the fact that we need to guarantee the lowest price to rent things. This would be the factor why people rent things from us, basically, compared to buying it, because I was always comparing buying versus
Yeah.
renting. That's why I basically put low prices, and I put very short duration period, because the factor you can play with to increase or reduce price when you do rentals is on top of the daily price is the duration, basically.
Mm.
So it is, okay, let's do low prices for 24 hours. This was tough. This was really tough on everyone because it was tough first on the customer, because if you think about it, you're asking someone within 24 hours to go somewhere, pick something like a carpet cleaner, air fryer, or whatsoever, bring it home, use it, and bring it back within 24 hours. That's a lot. It's a lot for the shop because they have to prepare something for just 24 hours and then it's going to come back, and it's not great. It is a lot for us because, frankly, I think, the rental price doesn't make us any money. I know now that basically I have a better sense of how much work it takes to prepare something, basically, and it's, at least between 5 to 10 minutes between the different types of equipment, which means, potentially you need, to pay people. I mean, you need to pay people a fair wage. So, that if you rent something for $15 for one day, nobody is making money, basically.
Yeah.
So we pivoted to do, and that was over time, right? This is not just overnight. The price actually had increased after to $20 for one day because I realized that the price was not right for to make money, basically. And then that became $30 for 48 hours. And that is now the winning recipe. Because, people feel like, $30 for 48 hours is good, compared to buying something for $150 or using a service for 350, it's much lower. 48 hours is enough time for you to use it, to like let it sit and then bring it back. And obviously, like in terms of revenue sharing, $30 is much better for the shops too. So this is, for example, one kind of pivot we did. Another one we did, I mean, we knew it. It's kind of related to use of third-party platforms.
Mm.
Um, as I mentioned earlier, I think when we started, we didn't spend too much resources on building something without knowing whether there was demand for it. So we first focused on trying to see whether there was demand for it. But then when we had demand for it, we saw that our technology, our system were not up to it. There are so many limitations. That's kind of why at the time I hired some external consultant to try to fix things that didn't work. But basically, it became clear and obvious that, for our growth, for us to scale, we needed to move forward to build our own platform, especially when you look for investors. IP obviously is a big question
Mhm.
here.
IPs matter. Yeah.
We didn't own the technology. We had the idea, we had the network, we had marketing, brand, and everything, but we didn't own the technology, which is a big red flag for any investors. So we had to build a technology, and that's why we did. And finally, I think in early December, we launched our own new native platform. So basically, we own the technology, which allows us to basically be fully autonomous, to own the intellectual property, but also to pave the way for future for development, because this technology will enable us to do the marketplace, the peer-to-peer rental, very soon.
Yeah, everything comes back to what the customer needs, but also it should be profitable for you to continue to run the business, right? More like what you mentioned as win-win. So these are not really pivots, different ways of finding the balance of the right mix of win and win between you and your customers and probably your partners as well, right? So I hope every entrepreneur tries to take some of these tips and tricks. Now, you had some network, you had some prior industry experience, and you know what you want to do, but then you also had a lot of ideas on how to take the lessons to create a new thing. Now, do you have any advice and resources for someone getting into entrepreneurship as a founder or co founder, especially if they don't have the right network? They're not part of an insiders club where they know people who have done this successfully, or they come from a very non-traditional background but want to do something meaningful in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is different here, and we all have different networks. I think had a good network. I think coming from a non-profit sector, people in the impact world. I think people who done a great job and having done a lot of impact. I didn't necessarily have had a big network in the business world, in the startup world, in the tech world, basically.
Hmm.
So I didn't necessarily and that created two issues for me at the very beginning. I think one, I didn't understand that word. I didn't speak the language of that word. There are very specific codes and terms you're supposed to use, and I'm still learning every day. And two, I didn't necessarily have the connection to even talk to investors, because I think a big way to learn is just to talk to people, to understand what they're looking for, why, how they want things to be presented, and so on. So I started a bit with a disadvantage. I mean, I knew on the impact world what could be done, and had some ideas, and a lot of people around me loved what I wanted to do, and was ready to volunteer. But frankly, very few people could make checks, or who could basically help me move forward. So I did two things. I'm not. I mean, how could I say? I can be social, but I'm not like a big networker. I think I don't necessarily like to put myself, in front in the spotlight. I put it this way, but I think you have to do violence to yourself when you do this. When you're the founder, you are the face of the company, and you have to do it. It's like, some people don't like to do accounting. Well, too bad. You're gonna have to do accounting, because this is
You
why
had
you're
to do
gonna
it.
learn most of the lessons
Yeah.
on your business. So I pushed myself to do more, to go to events, to talk to people, to connect with people, to understand a bit better what is this world, what people like, what people don't like, what is expected, basically. I did a number of pitches, and actually the first pitch I did was with you, Bhuva, I think last year. This is my very first pitch, and I've done 7 pitches since. And I remember that, like, the 2 days before the pitch, just like, oh my gosh, how I'm going to do this. This is so hard, like, just to be, to talk to people. There's a bit of a feeling of competition. This was fairly friendly, it's a fairly crowd, and a fairly friendly crowd, and so on. But still, I think, you need to put yourself out there to explain what you're doing, and to be very concise and precise. And I think that is a great exercise. I mean, I definitely encourage everyone to try to do pitches, even if you think you have no chances. Just do it. It doesn't matter. I think it's a great exercise.
Yeah.
It forces you to tell a story, to explain what you're doing, and worst case scenario, you're gonna meet great people, and you're gonna talk to them after the pitch. So I think that's definitely one of them. But I think for me, back to what we were talking about earlier, I think the big thing was, I knew I could not go straight to raise money, and I'm still, trying to figure this out, to be frank and transparent. I knew that the one thing I could do was to show traction. I needed to
Mm.
show traction. I needed to start small, and to put a few things together, and to get my first paying customers, and then the second one, and then the third, and then try to learn from that to make it better and better and better. And that's really what I've been focusing on. And frankly, this is what has, for me, opened the most doors. I'm still pitching once in a while, and I don't necessarily win pitches all the time, but at least, people often come to me and say, "Wow, we've done 1,000 rentals, and it's great. I mean, how have you done this?" I think, like, the grit and the will to continue pushing is something that impresses people, and then shows that if they were to give me money, I could do something good with it. Because at the end of the day, I believe this is what investors want. They don't really invest in an idea. They invest in a team, or people who can deliver on that idea, essentially. And I think that's one of the key learning from me. I think I can also think about a couple of groups. I think so. I'm based in New York City. I think, and there are definitely groups of, like, founders and or sustainability that have been very useful for me. I'm gonna mention a couple of friends here, but one of them is the New York area sustainability group. It's led by
Mm.
my good friend Josh Weiner. They meet maybe a few times a year, sorry, and organize events. I think the next one is on AI and sustainability, which is obviously a very big topic as well. It's a great way to go connect with people and meet with them. Another group I joined recently, it's called the Startup Leadership Program, SLP. You can check the website. They select about 30 entrepreneurs per year, There's no equity, so there's no competition for money. So it's
Yeah.
both a good and bad thing. But the good thing is that really, I think it's all about the spirit of entrepreneurship and collaboration between entrepreneurs, because as anyone in this call knows, I think it's a very lonely place to be an entrepreneur. You have to do so many things, and many of these things we've never done before. And everything seems so impossible constantly. But it's
Yeah.
good to be among a group of people who share the same thing and are really open to share their network with you. Going back to networking. Um, Another two groups I was thinking about is a program called the Founder University. It's by
Okay.
launch. It's very different. It's much bigger groups. It's about 400 people per program for about 12 weeks. It's all virtual. Um, it can be competitive, I'll be honest. I think, and most of it is going to be AI related. So watch out if you're like me, impact or sustainability company. You might not be on the top priority, but at least again you get to see. I think even just hearing other people pitch gives you idea about how to pitch. I think is a good way. And then last but not least, obviously, Wallet Max, I think you've
Thank you.
been obviously like a big support. I think, with what you've been doing both, New York Tech Week and Climate Week, bringing together entrepreneurs, people who are like investors or, working in that space. It's just great. I think to have this kind of like safe space to talk to people and to be frank, basically, and explain what you're trying to build and how you're going to build it.
Thanks so much, Francois, for pitching with us last year. Like you really mentioned, having a friendly space and a safe crowd, you can test out your pitch, your idea. You may even get ideas to pivot or enhance, whatever that case is. You don't have to be fundraising all the time, but trying to network and putting the word out there that there is a business like this is really important, especially when word of mouth matters a lot. You don't know where your next customer, partner, or your investor may come from when you need them. One of the challenges many founders have is when they need to really fundraise in the next 3 months, they start conversations today, and it might be sometimes a little bit too late, taking a lot of time. So you're networking all the time, even when there is no need, no harm trying to pitch what you do, so it kind of gets the word out. And if it's a safe space, you can always seek feedback as well, right? So thanks so much for your support as well, for the Wallet Max community. And I know we can keep talking quite a lot. I can also see time is coming up. I wanted to see if there is anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up. How can people get in touch with you? What is your ask? What can people do when they see Green Gooding?
Yeah, thanks so much, Bhuva, for the conversation, and happy to share. If anyone wants to reach out to me as well, happy to discuss and talk to any founders, co-founders, or someone who just has an idea and want to like create something. I mean, as for us, I think for Green Gooding, we're about to launch the next phase of the company essentially. So the big thing for us is to launch our marketplace in a few weeks. And basically we're almost there in terms of technology. So soon people will be able to list their equipment. So it will be an opportunity, as you mentioned, with that, for people to either save money renting things they don't own or make money renting things they have at home that sits idle, basically. So very excited about this. So definitely encourage everyone to check our website, greengooding.com. We have 7 locations in New York City. Soon, when we launch a marketplace, hopefully we can actually expand to additional cities in the US and find other user cases. I think the one thing I want to say, I think as a concluding thought, is that it can seem tough today for climate and sustainability startup in the US. I know policy shifts, but I think behaviors are here to stay, and we see things going into the right direction. So hang in there, show results, get traction, get revenues, and you'd get there essentially. So good luck to everyone working on this. It's happening, and there are many examples here in the US and beyond of companies that are very successful in that space.
Yeah, exactly. And like you rightly also mentioned, talk to other founders in this space so you can share and learn. And even if you are not fundraising, talk to investors to see what they are seeing as trends, have some of them as mentors or advisors, continue to network and build community. And like you mentioned, pitch, it's a low risk opportunity, right, to
Totally.
get the word out and to shape your idea as well. And if people want to get in touch with you, greengooding.com. Especially, I hope a lot of people are excited about the peer-to-peer marketplace, right? So that's going to be a great push for the rental sector itself. So good luck with that as well, Francois.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining us. And if you are a fintech startup, don't miss out the fundraising event from Wallet Max. We have startup pitch competitions. Francois just mentioned how beneficial it is. It's going to be a friendly crowd, safe space to test out your pitch and idea and probably get some traction. We'll also have investors panel discussion who will talk about what are the investing trends, funding trends at the moment in 2026, what you can hope for through the rest of the year. The event is on April 20th as we kick off the New York FinTech Week. The tickets are now live. You can see the Luma registration link scrolling below in the screen. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks so much, Francois, for taking time to share your lessons with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.